All right, thank you very much for being here with me. Appreciate you tuning in. To start off the episode, let's talk about the weakening of the Chinese market. It has led to yet another downsizing at a global financial firm, a major one at that. Sources told Reuters that Morgan Stanley Investment Management China has laid off about 9% of its staff. And the downsizing underscores all the challenges that global financial firms, that's including JP Morgan, BlackRock as well, and what they face in the world's second biggest economy. And this is coming as a protracted economy malaise batters markets there. China's blue chip CSI 300 index sank to 5-year lows last month after having lost 11% in 2023. It was pummeled by an unprecedented debt crisis in the property sector and a lack of large-scale stimulus. Now, according to company disclosures, the assets managed by Morgan Stanley's Shenzhen-based unit have declined every quarter since its peak in 2021. Earnings results showed that the unit operated at a loss of nearly 49 million yuan in 2022 and another loss of 23 million yuan the following year. And besides that, we're getting new investing advice, and that is don't invest in China right now. This message coming from the Chief Investment Officer at Goldman Sachs Wealth Management Branch. The statement comes as Beijing projects financial ambition, setting a 5% goal for economic growth. Now, what are the CEO's reasons for telling us to back off? Let's watch this.
Chinese stocks are slumping, and some may wonder if it's a good time to invest since stocks are cheap. Here's a piece of advice from one of Goldman Sachs' chief investment officers. One should not invest in China right now. Sharmeen Mosavar-Rahmani is the chief investment officer of Goldman Sachs' wealth management business. Her statement comes as China's premier predicted the country's economy would grow by 5% this year. He set the goal during China's most important political meeting of the year, called the Two Sessions. Speaking to Bloomberg TV Monday, investment officer Rahmani listed her reasons for backing off from investing in China. First off, she believes China's economy is going to slow down for the next 10 years. Second, the country's policy uncertainty. It's unclear what China's direction will be in the long term. He also added that China's pillars of economic growth have been weakened, including the property market, infrastructure, and exports. Lastly, data remains unclear. China said its economy grew by over 5% last year, but Rahmani said most people think that is not the real growth number, and that it was actually much weaker. All in all, her conclusion is, quote, "We don't recommend clients move into China at this point."
Meanwhile, business could soon be restricted with Chinese biotech companies over national security concerns in the United States. A U.S. Senate committee has approved a bill that would regulate work with Chinese biotech companies like BGI and WuXi AppTec. Lawmakers say they are trying to protect Americans' personal health and genetic information from foreign adversaries. Now, the companies have denied that they pose any security threat, but the bill's introduction spurred a sell-off in shares of WuXi AppTec. The committee vote was nearly unanimous. Republican Senator Rand Paul, the only no vote, by the way, raised concerns over the effects this would have on the biotech supply chain for U.S. companies. And now on to Wall Street. The three major indexes closed higher on Wednesday after U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said he expected the central bank to cut rates this year, although he shied away from committing to a timetable. Here's a quick recap of markets.
Wall Street's major indexes closed higher on Wednesday as comments from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell reinforced expectations that the central bank would start cutting interest rates this year. The Dow gained 0.2%, the S&P 500 climbed 0.5%, and the Nasdaq added 0.6%. In prepared remarks to the House Financial Services Committee, Powell on Wednesday said inflation had eased substantially since hitting 40-year highs in 2022, but that policymakers still needed greater confidence in its decline before rate cuts. Melissa Brown, managing director of applied research at SimCorp, noted nothing unusual in his remarks, but did find investors' optimism a bit surprising.
Where I did see something that was a little bit more unusual was the reaction of traders that we can see through the CME FedWatch tool. And although the difference was slight, they seem to have increased their probability that the rate cut would come sooner rather than later. So it went up a little bit from the probability we saw yesterday. And that was a little surprising to me because he also, he talked about the strength in the economy and, jobs growth looking good. And so I was surprised that even though the increase was small, that we saw any increase.
February's jobs report, due on Friday, is expected to offer further clarity on Fed policy. In company news, shares of Tesla fell more than 2%, losing ground for its third straight day. A closely watched Morgan Stanley analyst lowered his price target on the stock, saying that electric vehicle demand was continuing to weaken in key markets, including China, despite hefty price cuts. Also, a Baird analyst said Tesla's first quarter earnings were at risk, suggesting delivery estimates still need to go lower. Shares of cryptocurrency-linked companies advanced, including a 10% gain for Coinbase Global and MicroStrategy's 18.5% increase. And shares of CrowdStrike Holdings soared nearly 11% after it forecast annual results above Wall Street estimates, lifted by strong enterprise spending on cybersecurity to counter rising online threats. However, rival Palo Alto fell 4%.
And let me talk a little bit more about what Powell said yesterday. The head of the Federal Reserve is feeling confident the U.S. can avoid recession, but shied away from committing to a rate cut timeline. Fed Chair Jerome Powell told lawmakers there's no evidence the U.S. economy is at risk of falling into a recession. In fact, he said the Fed is on a good path to achieve a soft landing. And inflation continues to fall toward the 2% target while the economy grows and the unemployment rate remains low. Though the Fed still expects to reduce its benchmark interest rate later this year, but Powell said it was unclear when that would be. He noted that continued progress of lowering inflation is, quote, not assured. These are his words. Now, investors are currently expecting the initial rate reduction to be in June, but only time will tell. Meanwhile, voters will be tested this election cycle as a new report reveals how easy it is to use AI tools to make fake election-related images. A tech watchdog group tested 4 tools and found more than 40% of the time the tool would generate a misleading image. Now, the Center for Countering Digital Hate discovered the tools were more likely to be used to create pictures depicting election fraud, like trashed ballots, than images with candidates. Researchers tested Midjourney, Stability AI's Dream Studio, OpenAI's ChatGPT Plus, and Microsoft Image Creator. And each one had protections in place and said they are adding more or are working to prevent abuse, but researchers are calling current protections inadequate. Now, with the presidential rematch set for November, global markets are bracing for the possibility of former President Donald Trump to return to the White House. Trump back in the Oval Office could mean more tariffs. He did say that he would consider 60% tariffs on Chinese goods on top of the $200 billion he imposed in his first term, which, by the way, Biden kept in place. Researchers estimate that the tariffs, if imposed, would shave off 0.7% of China's GDP. Meanwhile, European policymakers also concerned Trump could reimpose tariffs or impose new ones. Europe would also look to boost military spending in a Trump second term. Trump has suggested he won't defend allies who fail to spend enough money on their own defense. Moving on, travelers have another reason to pack lightly. Delta Airlines raised the cost of a first checked bag on domestic flights to $35. This is a $5 hike. Now, the charge for an additional bag is $45, also $5 more than before. Though the increase from Delta doesn't come out of the clear blue sky, both United and American Airlines boosted their baggage fees last month. But raising costs to check luggage is something Delta has not done since 2018. U.S. carriers are making a bundle from baggage fees. They collected $6.8 billion in 2022, according to the Department of Transportation. Meanwhile, the IRS is offering some Americans a helping hand with the tax man. It's the Direct File Service. This is a free online program that provides step-by-step guidance to filling out tax forms. Officials launched it in January on a limited basis, but they now say it's available in 12 states, including California, Nevada, and Arizona. However, there are some limitations to the program. For example, it only works for people whose wages are limited to being reported on a W-2. Roughly 19 million people in the U.S. will be eligible to use this program, according to the Treasury Department. Direct File is available until April 15th. And online scams are costing people billions of dollars last year. The FBI in a new report reveals a record $12.5 billion in losses were reported in 2023. The Bureau says that was fueled by a surge in cryptocurrency investment fraud. Last year's total losses were from scams of more than $2 billion higher than reported in the year prior. And it represents the highest tally of losses from digital scams since the Bureau began reporting on that topic more than 2 decades ago. The FBI says cyber scammers have the means to paralyze school systems, departments, and healthcare facilities. Officials say investment scams are also common, many of which involve criminals pretending to be someone's love interest to trick them into investing in phony cryptocurrency schemes. Meanwhile, West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey announced a group of 10 states will launch a legal challenge to new climate regulations. The new rule by the Securities and Exchange Commission requires public companies to disclose their climate-related risks and direct greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this is a first-of-its-kind regulation. Here's Morrisey.
What they've released today is still wildly in defect and illegal and unconstitutional. And that's why we take the action that we're taking today.
The SEC voted 3-2 Wednesday to approve the climate disclosure rule, and it's going to go into effect in 2026. West Virginia and Georgia co-led the petition for review, joined by Alabama, Alaska, Indiana, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Wyoming, Virginia, and New Hampshire. It was filed in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. Morrisey says that the new rule is a backdoor move to undermine the energy industry. He argues that this is yet another attempt to advance an agenda without statutory authority.
The Securities and Exchange Commission. And let's be clear, that's a financial regulator. They're designed to look at fraud in the pricing marketplace related to securities. We think that this rule is going to make it virtually impossible for companies to calculate how their environmental impact is material. How is a company supposed to know if greenhouse gas emission will affect its finances? How many trucks are going to be too many? How much coal do you use versus natural gas or other forms of energy?
Now, first proposed in 2022, the rules are part of President Joe Biden's efforts to leverage federal agency rulemaking to address climate change. Now, the current form of the rule is actually a more lenient version from when it was first announced. Anticipating legal challenges, the Biden administration dropped much more strict elements of the rules. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un inspected field training of troops at a major military operations base in the western region of the country yesterday and ordered heightened readiness for war. This is according to state media today. Here's the report.
State TV released these images they say show Kim a day earlier inspecting troops at a major military base. The broadcast said they were training under conditions simulating actual war. Kim was also quoted as saying the military must, quote, dynamically usher in a new heyday of intensifying the war preparations in line with the requirements of the prevailing situation. Kim's tour of the base, the location of which was not identified, comes after the start of annual combined military drills by U.S. and South Korean forces on Monday in the south, with twice the number of troops taking part compared to last year. Pyongyang urged the allies to stop their drills, calling them rehearsals for war. Seoul and Washington say the exercises are defensive and a response to the North's threats. North Korean state media did not mention whether Kim explicitly referred to the joint U.S.-South Korean drills in his remarks Wednesday at the military base.
At 65 years of age, Barbie shows no sign of retiring from her 250 different jobs as a plastic and fantastic doll whose small feet have left a big culture mark on the human world. Here's the story.
The average life cycle for a brand is about 5 years. So for Barbie to be celebrating her 65th is a really big deal.
Mattel's Barbie is celebrating her 65th birthday. The world's most iconic doll has had a long journey with many highs and lows.
My Barbie doll is really real.
The original Barbie was created in 1959 by Ruth Handler, inspired by her daughter Barbara.
1963, I got my first Barbie doll, and I was obsessed with Barbie ever since then.
65 years later, Barbie shows no signs of retiring. Let's take a look at how Barbie has been able to sustain as one of the most successful toy brands of all time. The original Mattel Barbie featured her iconic blonde hair with a black and white bathing suit. Nowadays, Barbies have 250 different jobs and come in 35 skin tones, 97 hairstyles, and 9 body types. It includes dolls with wheelchairs, Down syndrome. Here's Kim Kalmoni, Mattel's Vice President of Barbie Design.
The work that we did to go on a path to make Barbie the most diverse doll line on the marketplace is something that touches me personally, and seeing the impact in the world is incredible. Barbie's success is based around the fact that we evolve, that we are constantly striving to change to be reflective of the world that kids and fans and families see around them.
The commercial success of the Barbie movie, directed by Greta Gerwig and starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, brought the ubiquity of the Barbie brand into sharp focus. The movie hit $1 billion in global ticket sales within 2 weeks of its release in 2023. The doll has also become a fashion icon recently, inspiring the hot pink Barbie core look.
The enthusiasm people have shown all around the world, and people showing up with their friends and wearing pink and getting dressed up, and like the amount of dudes that are showing up for this movie, I'm thrilled.
Whether hand sculpting new dolls or operating advanced 3D printers, the brand is open to change. The 65th anniversary dolls, created by Filipino lead designer Carlisle Nuera, are a new take on the original Barbie's bathing suit, reimagined as a black and white gown, accompanied by new sunglasses. Executive Vice President and Global Head of Barbie and Dolls, Lisa McKnight, shares what more we can expect to come from Barbie World.
We're excited to do more in our Ken segment. As you can imagine, Ken has gotten a lot of popularity since the movie. Barbie's got family members, she's got a world of friends. So there's a lot of additional work we can do, again, not only with representation, but different characters. We're going to be introducing a new scale of Barbie and her entire world, actually a little bit later this year. So lots more to do.
When Michelangelo began to chip away at marble to create his David, he never would have imagined that half a millennia later, another artist will be following in his footsteps, only this time in Lego. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
Artist Nathan Sawaya believes using Legos to create reimagined versions of some of the world's most famous art masterpieces resonates with audiences in a special way.
This exhibition has over 100 works of art, so you're looking at 20 years of my life almost of building these creations.
Over 100 Lego sculptures made up of over 1 million bricks are being showcased at the Art of the Brick exhibition in London. Works such as Michelangelo's David, Van Gogh's Starry Night, and Da Vinci's Mona Lisa.
Early on, I realized that Lego bricks could be anything I could imagine. I didn't have to follow what was on the front of the box or follow the instructions. I could just build what I could envision. So if I wanted to pretend to be a rock star, I would just take those Lego bricks and build myself a guitar. If I wanted to be an astronaut, I could build myself a rocket ship. The toy became anything I could imagine it to be. So my advice for others is, if you want to explore using Lego bricks, just get some bricks and start building. Use your imagination and see what happens.
This exhibition has been on a world tour visiting 100 cities in 24 countries. Organizers say around 10 million people have come to marvel at the Lego sculptures so far. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And the US CDC dropped its 5-day COVID-19 isolation recommendation under a new guidance, instead suggesting that people return to normal activities if symptoms improve and they are fever-free for at least 24 hours without needing medicines. Here's what you need to know.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention officially dropped its 5-day COVID-19 isolation guidelines. It now says people can return to normal activities if they are fever-free for at least 24 hours. In relaxing the rules, the agency said in a statement, the US has far fewer hospitalizations and deaths now due to COVID-19, and more tools than ever to fight flu, COVID, and RSV. The guidelines were last updated in December 2021. The CDC, though, does say those at risk, such as elderly over the age of 65 or people with weakened immune systems, should still take more precautions. Meanwhile, the agency signed off on the use of updated COVID vaccines as a second annual shot for adults aged 65 and older on Wednesday. The CDC says 22% of adults report receiving an updated COVID-19 jab for 2023 to 2024, including 42% of those aged 65 or older.
More than 1 billion people globally are now considered obese, a condition linked to an increased risk of numerous serious health problems, according to updated estimates from the World Health Organization and an international group of researchers. Here's more.
Obesity is linked to numerous serious health problems, like the early onset of diabetes, heart and kidney disease. The findings are based on data from more than 220 million people in more than 190 countries. Francesco Branca is the director of the Department of Nutrition and Food Safety at the World Health Organization.
Obesity rates have been increasing in all or in most of the world countries. Only a few countries have been able to keep the rates at the levels of 30 years ago. But in general, there's been a large increase both in high-income countries and in countries of lower income.
Between 1990 and 2022, obesity rates for adults more than doubled, while the rate among children and adolescents more than quadrupled. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says implementing measures such as taxes on high sugar products and promoting healthy school meals are needed to help tackle obesity rates. Some scientists also say potent new obesity drugs like Novo Nordisk's Wegovy are tools that may help, but their cost and low availability risk further increasing inequality.
And that's all for today's NTD Business. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week.